So this one happens once in a blue moon. We've mailed our proxy to shareholders ahead of our annual shareholders meeting when suddenly a director decides they don't want to serve anymore, they resign, or perhaps the director dies, and the company quickly finds a replacement to serve in their place as the director nominee. Do we have to amend our proxy? Today on Zippy Point.
Quick Zips by Zippy Point.
Quick and dirty. I'm Brock Romanak, and I'm a big fan of yous. So this one can be tricky. Let me start by noting that you have to file a Form 8K within 4 business days of the director resigning, and hopefully you got that resignation in writing, as I noted in my separate Vid-Guide about can a director resign for any reason, the link to which is beneath this video. If there's no disagreement between the director and the company when the director resigns, the 8K is filed under item 502B. If there was a disagreement, the 8K is filed under item 502A with a copy of the resignation letter from the director noting the disagreement filed as an exhibit to the 8K. Perhaps the company will also issue a press release noting that the director has resigned, but that's not too common. One odd quirk of the securities laws is that a Form 8K is not required if a director dies. So if a director dies after you mail the proxy but before the annual meeting, the analysis for whether you have to revise the proxy is the same, but you don't have a Form 8K obligation to report the death, although some companies file one voluntarily anyways to inform the market of this sad development. Okay, so a director leaves or dies. What happens if the company, the board, can get its act together quickly and find a replacement, a new director nominee in short order? Legally, you are permitted to have a new nominee replace the departing director so long as you have the magic language on your proxy card noting that your appointed proxies have the discretion to vote for replacement nominees. If you have that magic language, Rule 14A4C5 permits you to vote proxies in favor of the replacement nominee without a new proxy being delivered to shareholders with the new nominee's name on it. You don't have to engage in a new proxy solicitation. That would be the good news. You can use the votes cast for the nominee that's being replaced for that new nominee. So here's an example of a proxy card that has that magic language on it. And then here's another example of a proxy card with the magic language. Now note that plenty of companies don't have this magic language. They don't have this type of replacement substitute nominee on their proxy card. It may be an oversight, or it might be that they just would not use that authority to replace a nominee even if they had it. They might be the kind of company that they couldn't possibly move that fast to replace a nominee. They have a vetting process for a new director candidate that takes longer than a few days or even longer than a few weeks. Or they might be the kind of company wary of potential shareholder backlash if they switched in a replacement nominee. They want to give shareholders a full opportunity and ample time to review proxy disclosure about each nominee that's being voted upon. If a company did replace a nominee, if they're smart, they would at least warn shareholders by filing a proxy supplement ahead of the annual meeting. So here's an example of a company saying that it may replace a resigning director. And even that's a little bit unusual. You just can't find many examples. And you can't find examples because it's unusual. I didn't do an exhaustive search, but I did a bit of digging and I didn't come up with anything. I could only find examples where a director resigned and was not replaced. The closest thing I could find was this proxy supplement where a company settled a proxy fight between the time of the proxy being mailed and the annual meeting. And as part of the settlement of the proxy fight, the company, the board, agreed to add a new director from the dissident slate and expanded its board by 1. If a company didn't include the required replacement authority language, the magic language on its proxy card, or it had the magic language but decided not to use its authority, it would need to file a proxy supplement and a new proxy card that includes the replacement nominee in order to let shareholders cast votes for that new nominee. And they would have to deliver those revised materials to shareholders, including a new notice of internet availability that must go out at least 40 calendar days ahead of the annual meeting. So you likely would be looking at postponing your annual meeting. That could be a nightmare. That could be a mess. I have a separate Vid-Guide about postponing the annual shareholders meeting, a link to which is beneath this video. So I doubt a company would do this because most, if not all, boards have the authority under their bylaws to simply appoint a new director to fill a vacancy on the board. Then they would include that new director in their slate of director nominees to be voted upon at the next year's annual meeting. This is a much easier route. You fill the vacancy with a simple board vote after this upcoming annual meeting, and you go from there. You let that director serve out the year, and then they're on the ballot for next year's annual meeting. And by doing so, you don't need to postpone this annual meeting. You don't need to incur the shareholders' ire of having the optics of sneaking a director on the ballot. Anyway, if you do replace a director in that rare instance, you would obviously want to work it into your annual meeting script that a director that was on the ballot is not standing for re-election, and that a replacement nominee was selected and votes cast were transferred to this new nominee as permitted by the language of the proxy card. Then, of course, when you file your item 507AK to report the final tally for the vote totals, you're going to have to explain this situation again in highlighting that you're doing this and that you had the authority on your proxy card. Note that I have a separate Vid-Guide about whether you have to amend the proxy if a director nominee that is on the ballot resigns and it's not replaced, That's the opposite situation of this Vid-Guide where the resigning director is replaced. A link to that video is beneath this one. Anyways, let me know what you think.